I think we just crashed Zoom. I saw Zoom crash for a moment. It's an achievement.
Wow. 71 people joined this meeting. Do you know what? That is props to the speakers today. So you must have some serious celeb status. We've got some good numbers in today. So well done. Well done, team.
I heard they came for your banter, Charlie.
Yeah, well, they didn't come for yours, that's for sure. So I think let's get started because I know we're obviously a little bit late, a little bit late getting started. Um, for anybody that doesn't know me, I am Charlie Brennan. I am a PPC consultant. I am also the very, very friendly founder of the PPC Community Performance Academy and the newly launched Performance Conference in Manchester, Performance Manchester, of which Sal was actually one of the first speakers. So we actually decided to join forces for this webinar. It's actually the first webinar that Performance Academy has ever been a part of. So this is very, very exciting. Um, what I'll let Sal introduce himself properly, but before he goes in on the whole professional front, what I will say is me and Sal actually go back a long way. So the reason why we have a little bit of banter, we grew up in the same hometown. And yeah, just to throw a little bit of TMI in there, I used to date his cousin. So that always makes for really, really fun work conversations. So yeah, I think if there was ever somebody that I would be really keen to run a webinar with and really introduce my community to it would be Sal. He's doing some amazing things at the moment. So without further ado, I'll let Sal introduce himself.
Hey,
Hi.
everybody. Hopefully, I know quite a lot of you as well. Good to see you all. So, yeah, Sal, um, also group in Lancaster, like Charlie said, founder of a company called LangSync, which is an AEO company. So, in short, we help companies feature in GPT results. Um, I'm wearing my special t-shirt today, which I'm
My
not sure if
God.
it's going to catch it. Is it going to catch it? Nope, blurs failed me, but it does say there is no page two. And I think that really is important for all of us in this sort of AI world, which is as searches are moving to GPTs or even in the Google generative experience, less and less things are getting featured, which means that the fight is on to be the best practitioner, the best versions of ourselves, the most adept to the new technologies that are coming out, whether in PPC or SEO. So we set up AEO events to sort of evangelize and talk about this sort of shift alongside Genius and now PKI. And really why we wanted to put this event on together is the worlds are blurring, search is getting more and more dispersed. And it doesn't really matter whether you're a PPC practitioner, you're in affiliates, you're in SEO, it has massive implications for all of us because it was very easy to pin the pin on the pony's tail previously, right? You went to Google basically, and when searches are starting in a plethora of different places, whether ChatGPT, Perplexity, your Tesla car, your Reddit search, whatever that is, Amazon, it just makes it incredibly hard to keep on top of. So hopefully this is a very practical place to talk about some leading tips, how things are shaping up and what we can do about it as well. So we're going to kick off with a very quick fireside with Nate Burke and myself. We're going to discuss content, contacts, and metrics. So how these things are really shaping in the world of AI and how they're affecting both paid and SEO together. And we'll throw out some wild strategies and wild theories around there. Yeah, I've spent half of the year pretty much in the US, between New York and San Francisco, working with foundation models to figure out what they're building, how things are adapting. I also look after, hopefully we've got a few members here, the ex-Google and DeepMind network. So a network of 35,000 uh, ex-Google and DeepMind staff across the world. A lot of them have built some of these models, headed up by Chris Fong, who hopefully is here too. So yeah, oh, Matt, thanks for coming in from California. Hopefully you got your orange juice with you at 8 a.m. That's very good. So yeah, we'll kick off with the fireside, and then we've got an incredible panel that Charlie's going to run with some of the industry's leading experts across SEO, paid, and all general marketing as well. So Nate, why don't we come up and sort of kick off with some of the discussions, I guess. Um, because we've got a lot of different people in from a lot of different disciplines, an whole range of people at different stages of their career. I think what we want this to be is very practical. What can you do? How are things shaping? I wanted you to come up and discuss this with me because you're the founder of Diginius. You've worked with Google, you worked with Microsoft, you worked with a whole number of players. You work with thousands of agencies across the world. You work with thousands of end customers across the world. And you're pulling in metrics and data from pretty much most places you can think, from lookalike data to ad metric data, optimization recommendations. So I feel like you've got a very good grasp of how the industry is looking. And I wanted to keep it really tight in terms of contacts, assets slash content, and metrics to see how each of these will change because I think there's so much meat in how we're going to need to supercharge ourselves to be able to cover all of these. And then it also gives a lot of room for the experts to come in on the panel as well and talk about their specific areas and what they're seeing. But Nate, why don't you come on just to introduce yourself really quickly and then we'll jump into some questions.
Yeah, I think so. And like I haven't noticed so as long as Charlie, but yeah, we did a good bit of work together when he was at Google 10 years ago and kept up ever since. And yeah, his sister did an intern with us one summer, so that was kind of fun. Um, yeah, so yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of Diginius, American, well, now a dual citizen, but yeah, based in London now for the last 15 years, and yeah, we support a lot of paid media agencies around the globe in over 60 countries, specifically on Microsoft, but now kind of expanding into a number of other channels as well in 2026. So yeah, we support pretty much any vertical B2B e-commerce and every size of agency from freelancers up to kind of larger independent agencies. In most markets. So, and we do with our platform, we have a tech platform, so we do a lot of in it. We integrate to all the major media players, and then we look at performance and how do you get high performance out of the different ones. And and yeah, this whole AI world that we're all moving into is changing things dramatically. And to me, it feels like where we're at the moment. You have the initial kind of here it comes and what is it and then this excitement and exuberance and now it feels to me like we're in this kind of mid stage of uh, a lot of confusion and figuring it out and how do you make money off of it and how do you organize it and then over the next couple of years I think people kind of get it into normal business normal process but right now it's kind of probably the toughest bit of it it feels to me like.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting. And, we've got something that's happening, I think, from this dispersion is I am going to be quite radical in some of these takes I'm going to take and take them with a pinch of salt, but I'm not sure if the ICP exists anymore. Like things move so fast. I remember I started my career at Telefonica O2. We did a segmentation analysis of, 20 million customers that we had at the time. And it was kind of like set in stone. You did it once and that was it. Boom, off you go. And what I find now is your ICP changes like every 2 months. ChatGPT went from 400 million users in February to 800 million in April. And I think what's happening is a really interesting shift in the contact space where two things are happening. One, the dispersion is making your customers move everywhere. So all of a sudden they were on Google, now they're on ChatGPT, or some of them are vibe coding, some of them are on here. And then the other thing is people that were never your customer are suddenly now your perfect customer. And I find this like, let's say in the construction space, uh, we've been working with a construction company and they were like, it's so hard to get contractors to do anything. They hate technology. But ChatGPT's just given them an interface where they can just chat, and all of a sudden they're all buying software, and actually they're the main ICP now. So it opens up all these really interesting things where your ICP is shifting all the time, which means that your marketing channels are shifting all the time. And I kind of wonder, what practical things would you look at to see how can you spread across an ever more increasing range of places where people are searching?
Yeah, so I mean, th back 5, 6 years ago when we kind of really started our kind of Microsoft program, the one of the biggest objections we got was, yeah, there's always the typical things like, oh, it's just old people and don't know how to use the browser. But the big one was, why in the world would I, I've got Google and Meta. I can get all the customers I want from Google and Meta. I don't need to learn anymore. I don't want to learn anymore. It's just efficient. Like a lot of the bigger companies, it's just like I've got this, that's it. And now with consumers kind of both B2B and B2C moving into all sorts of different things, whether it's B2B is, they're all over Reddit, they're LinkedIn, um, they're just, and then on the consumer side, it's not, it's like Instagram, but then now it's TikTok and YouTube and then with the privacy and the data and all that, it's harder to track. Plus, they're going everywhere. And then now you've got these LLMs, and LLMs. Um, they make behavior similar to kind of traditional B2B buying behavior. And kind of when I say B2B buying behavior, if you look at how B2B buyers work, they go do their research. They go read their articles, they read the papers, they go to trade shows, they consume a lot of information, and they build their request for proposals. And then when they've got about 85% of it already, then they go and talk to you. But they don't talk to you early. They don't want to talk to you until they've done their research. And so they just come in and like, boom, they know what they want, and generally they know who they want it from. And so 70% of B2B buyers will buy from the first person they talk to because they've already kind of made up their mind even before they go talk to you. And so in the data we see, like in site traffic, you have just huge shifts in site traffic with organic, the way paid works, and people are kind of moving around, and but then you'll just see them just land on the site and buy. And so a lot of the companies, whether it's retail or whatever, they're not yet seeing huge shifts in purchases, just huge shifts in traffic. So they just kind of land and buy because they do the research in the LMs. And so um, but that will start shifting, we think, pretty quickly to who's good at getting indexed well and who's got their content right. And so when people go to the research, if you're not there, then you're not gonna become you're not gonna get the sale or the research. And so now it's kind of not just it's paid media, how do you reach the people, but then the organic side is making sure you're in there, because it's becoming so much more difficult to track what people are doing, where they're going, and they're going all over the place. It's kind of like it was 25 years ago when people were all over these Alta Vista, Lycos, Ask Jeeves, Yahoo, and you had all these different search, and so it was like you couldn't really track very well because there's just so many different places. Moving back to this kind of crazy
It's
Wild West again.
it's it's exactly that. And actually, A16Z, which is the world's largest venture capital fund, just released a email about an hour ago called Search Part 2. And it was basically that exact argument. Like before it was defined that the Google ranking system was going to win, everyone took different bets. So Yahoo were doing their own curation, Alta Vista were doing something different. All these different companies were making something different. And actually, it made it very hard to be on top of all that stuff. And now you've got to figure it out. And it's worth doing because, like we were saying, Nate, people are ready when they buy. GPT traffic is actually 6 times better converting than anything else. So that's just an interesting sort of take right now. Um, Moving on to sort of the asset side of things. So a big thing that I'm thinking about is like, I think about two things. One, assets on demand and software on demand. Like, I'm pretty sure we're heading to a world where software will be on demand. So I I need to head to this website. It will create the website as I click. Oh, Sal's coming. Sal needs this type of thing. Let me not show him all of these other things. Boom. And I think assets is going to be an interesting thing. I don't know if any of you have tried. Google DeepMind's new product, Pompeli. If you don't, get a US VPN and type Pompeli in, enter your website, and it will generate you 8 to 9 assets on the fly. It's incredible. But uh, one of the things I'm thinking about here is the speed at which you need to create assets and flip assets and change things is becoming a little bit,
Oh,
weirdly enough. I actually this morning, if any of you watched CNBC this morning, I actually opened the stock market, which was a weird experience. So we rang the bell this morning, and it talked about actually they can't actually put the live numbers on because the actual trades move so fast. The trades are down to the nanosecond, and what that means is that everything is done on the fly. And I wonder if like ads and traffic is moving to that same world where actually, you need to be doing assets on the fly. Everything is moving at a million, and refreshing creatives once a month, etc., might just not be the new normal anymore, which means there's a coordination between PR teams, SEO teams, paid teams that needs to happen. Obviously, you've got a platform where that also happens, so that's a dance. But like, how can you almost encourage practitioners to be working together at hyperspeed or even like joining agents together to actually unlock things for consumers or end clients in a world where we're going to need to work together to if you want to get indexed, you need all this content, but how do you create that content at scale compared to everybody else? So I wonder if you've got any interesting ways for agencies, companies, practitioners to be working together.
Yeah, so in the content creation, it's you get excited about the AI side, but then there's now like a huge push toward authenticity.
Yeah.
And so the kind of uh well, for lack of a better word, bullshit meter has like gone like early on when all this starts, you can do all these AI generated emails or this, but then people start to see it and smell it and they just don't like it. And so it's got to be like really good in order to be kind of seen as authentic. So I think the working out the AI, how do you um, improve processes and it is kind of one piece, but the actual images and all that, you got to be quite careful. And so like there's an like a lab in London that's kind of a high powered generating I would call it like very high quality content for some of the top brands and it's AI and they do a huge so but it's this kind of combination of artistic like really good artistic abilities in and using with the AI and then kind of making it kind of work for humans and that's a very you have to be really good at it in order to do it well. Now then there's the whole transactional side where you can kind of just create it and transact it and use the others like if you want to use in advertising, but then you got to really watch about compliance. Anybody in compliance industries, we see lawsuits and different and threats of lawsuits and all that happen when you have AI generate even text in like an insurance company or financial services company or um, because it's not compliant, it's not approved by the lawyers, it's regulated industries, it's all this, and so um, some of the um, and then even when you generate AI images, if it's not licensed correctly, like you use the wrong source and it creates something that's already copyrighted, you can get in trouble for that. So, so yeah, it's a tricky area. I think the um, some of the ways on the distribution of it, like where our R&D is headed in some of this is like just to if you want to go where all your customers are, you got to go on a lot of different platforms, whether it's Meta, TikTok, all you got to load all these assets up everywhere. And so when you create the assets, being able to chop them up and use them in the different places. So, if you're going to go on CTV, you need kind of evergreen, high quality TV commercial stuff. Whereas if you're going to be in the social platforms, it needs to be raw, authentic, not too good because it looks fake if it's too good and all that. So being able to kind of create and manage that and then load it everywhere. So like we're working on the ability to kind of load assets and distribute them to all the platforms automatically and then track the results automatically across all the platforms from a single location. Um, so yeah, the speed is incredibly faster than it used to be. Um, but yeah, how exactly to do it, it's difficult.
Well, this is the thing, right? With dispersion creates new opportunities, but it also creates a messiness in terms of the metrics that you need to track, keep on top of, and use to automate. So it's almost like, how do you have this central brain of metrics that everything is getting fed into cross-platform in real time? Again, almost like a stock exchange, because like things are moving so fast. And but yeah, how can you do that? And also, how do you come across things also like you said, moderation? And it's becoming ever more tricky now. I don't know if you guys saw, but uh, legal and health traffic is going to be heavily restricted on the GPTs right now, just because the amount of lawsuits that are piling up is becoming problematic to say the least. Especially, lawyers suing you because you sent the wrong law traffic is quite an ironic one. But yeah, I guess, you're probably Mr. Centralized Metric. So, with a ever increasing number of data coming from different places, one, how do you avoid analysis paralysis? And two, like, how do you turn the noise into real action?
Yeah, actually, a stock exchange, that's how I've always viewed internet traffic is kind of like a stock exchange. And um, like the chairman of DeGenius actually used to run the London Stock Exchange and kind of product and all that. And we have a lot of discussions around, traffic and trading and probabilities and all this. And because it's like, when you make decisions, you want to make decisions as accurate as possible. And a lot of times people want 99%, they want to know the answer 90% of the time. But anybody in PPC knows that if you wait till 99.9 or whatever percent accuracy, you got to spend a lot of money to get enough clicks and get enough conversions in order to make a decision on, so you go bankrupt, right? So like on that, they said in trading stocks, like the high speed traders, all that, you get 80% confident. Once you're 80% confident, you make a decision and you kind of move. And that was always one of the things that drove me nuts about Google. You can only you can't, like in the trading world, it's nanoseconds and it's all these sort of things. But in like when you buy, like we build trading engines on Google, and you can only get 1 hour increments. So high speed is like 1 hour, which is quite slow. Um, but yeah, the kind of the new world of yeah, if you think of it as data and it's just flows of data and moving it and but um uh, the education, it gets much more into education at the end of the day and eyeballs and education. But you've got to, with the LLMs, it's educating, so you've got to create the data in order to educate these LLMs on what. And when you talk to these guys, when you go to like Cannes or talk to these Microsoft execs, whatever, the way they talk with the world, a lot of an agentic world eventually, where the brands have their agents. So you build an agent on the website, it learns everything about the brand, and the shoppers have their agents, and then the shoppers will go say, "Hey, I need a X shirt and or Y shoes in this color, this size." They even know you. So I just say, "Hey, I need some new shoes. Where can I get them from?" And they go out and sort them out, who's got them in stock, and they come back and they say, "Okay, these stores have them, these options," and that's kind of where they see this automated world of agents going eventually. But to do that, you've got to have your infrastructure, your data, all that kind of clean and ready to go and automatic and
Yeah.
um, yeah.
I find that maybe, Charlie, that's another follow-up session we can do, which is actually like the agents to power SEO and PPC, because I do feel you almost need a chain of agents to sit on top of each platform to talk to a master agent to then give you useful insights. And then you can be like the quarterback to be like, okay, less TikTok, more Facebook, off you go. And then it will feed back to the other agents, maybe auto change and resize the assets and go back again. Like, I think that could be a really super one. And I think maybe Pierre will go a bit mad maybe in the next section on some of that stuff. He's a very technical
Well, I
individual.
can
But
tell you for certain, Sal, that will not be a session that you run with me because that will be bloody useless. So I'll
you're here for the
gladly
people, Charlie, not for
I'll gladly nominate some of the AI agent building whizzes that are in the community, but it certainly
we
will
could
not
do
be
it as
me leading that
a build and
session.
learn session for sure. But anyway, yeah, thank you, Nate, for that. Hopefully that was useful for you guys. I think definitely contacts, assets, and metrics are going to change fundamentally. So really interesting to look into these areas, and yeah, really excited for the panel to come. So over to you, Charlie.
Yes. So I know this is the part that everybody's been very excited for. It is the part that I'm very excited for, not because I'm the one that's leading it, but actually there's three very interesting people that I now get to interview and call it work. So without further ado, obviously there'll be people that have joined, like Sal said, from different worlds, different spheres of marketing. So as a little bit of a warm up, and obviously, to get you speakers warmed up and juiced ready for some of these questions, I'm going to get you to fire through just a bit of a quick intro. So, who you are, what you do, and how AI is already kind of shaping up the things that you look after. So, I'm going to go just because he's first on my screen. Kirk, do you want to introduce yourself just to the gang?
Sure. I'm Kirk Williams. I own Zato. We're a small PPC agency. We primarily do e-commerce. And a lot of how we utilize AI, I mean, we'll get to this later as we obviously talk on the PPC side of things. But besides obviously utilizing a lot of the native AI tools that Google is shoving at advertisers as much as possible, we use it a lot more as a research assistant, if you will, rather than a shortcut. And I can explain more when it's time. But I've just found a lot of value in bringing that in more and like helping me do the work I need to do, and not so much like replacing me. It kind of seems to suck so far at that. So.
Amazing. Thank you. And Crystal, next on my screen.
Hello, my name is Crystal Carter. I am the head of AI search and SEO communications at Wix and Wix Studio. And basically, I like to describe my role as communicating the value of SEO and AI search to Wix users, and communicating the value of Wix and Wix Studio to SEOs and PPC folks, and yeah, all of that. So essentially, we get involved with lots of things in terms of AI. The way that my team works is that essentially we're AI inside and out. Wix was one of the first places where there was an AI website builder way back in 2016. And our CEO is very much AI forward. We all have access to, Gemini Pro, and we have our own model bank where we can access lots of different models. We're building our own agents. We have agents that people are able to build within Wix. We have AI within Wix for our Wix users. It's something that we found has helped people who use Wix to get way more out of the platform. And it's also something that we found that people within our team are able to get a lot more out of our day to day. So yeah, we spend a lot of time. Yes, and as Sal's saying, shout out Base 44. Base 44 is a fantastic vibe coding thing. I'll bring it up when in our discussion as well. And that's something that we recently acquired for the same reason. Our team's very, very much AI forward, and yeah, I'm really pleased to be a part of it.
Lovely to have you. And then last but not least, yeah, very keen to hear from you. Tell us about yourself. Contestant number three.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Pierre. I'm actually a biologist by training, but I've been doing something with the tech industry forever. I was working at a startup, and then I got more well known in the industry because I was in Google Search as one of the public speakers presenting Google Search to the outside world. Then I was a product manager in Google Ads, and then I left 10 years ago, actually, almost to the day today. And since then, I've been working for myself. I'm a consultant. I work primarily with medium to large businesses. AI has basically been a large part of the advisory work I do. I am helping clients build AI tools. I am building with AI. I have an AI monitor and then content analysis platform that I've built for my work, kind of like what Kirk was saying, to make life easier for myself. Um, Everything is all about AI right now, and thinking about it and how AI is changing the industry, but more importantly, how it's changing society. I have two kids, and I'm just thinking like, what kind of world are we raising them? What kind of skills we need to prepare them for? Because it's a very different world than what we grew up in. So there's a lot of thinking that I'm doing about AI and helping clients along the way and having fun.
I feel like I literally just got like a flash in my head that I'm going to scream at my child the same way that my grandma used to scream at me for touching the VHS recorder. Like, God damn it, don't touch the agent. But anyway, leaning into that, I think we probably just need to start with the bigger picture. So I guess my first question is going to go to you, Crystal. So AI tools, obviously you mentioned Gemini there, ChatGPT, one of the biggest ones that a lot of people are using. They are starting to get more involved in deciding what gets seen on the internet, not specifically ads, but what content is getting seen. What do you think is the biggest shift that marketers need to make right now with those things in mind?
I think it's really important for people to be thinking about knowing their customer really, really well. If you look at the way that ChatGPT is evolving, and if you look at the general thrust of the whole AI environment, it's moving more and more and more towards personalization. It's moving more and more and more towards things that are very, very targeted at exactly who you are, and are agentic and agentive. And agentive is like, something that you don't have, that you sort of guide and you sort of are involved with. But agentic is it just goes off and does stuff without you being involved at all. And essentially, when you're in that space, the recommendations that users will get when they're talking to their AI will be very, very specialized for who they are. So ChatGPT recently just announced their ChatGPT 5.1, like literally yesterday. I was playing with it, and what it said was, it says, oh, you can customize it. You can customize the tone of voice. You can change the this. You can change the that. And so I was playing around with it, and you can put in the things that they should know about you. So I tested this as I said, well, things they should know about me. For one persona was vegan, gym girly, health conscious, right? And I said, give me brunch recommendations for London, and it gave me a bunch of vegan, health conscious brunch recommendations. Then I did another profile that was bougie, foodie, chocolate lover, and it gave me a completely different set of recommendations. I did the same question for vacation destinations for winter, and again with the same profile, it pulled up different recommendations. Then I did another one for brunch, or for a birthday celebration in Los Angeles. What was really interesting was that the first recommendation for both of these threads was brunch. Right? I didn't say that I wanted brunch, but because I'd done two questions before, I'd asked about brunch. It knows that I like brunch on both of those things. So I say all of this to say that we have loads and loads and loads of customer data. And from the PPC side, you have loads and loads of customer data. You know the demographics of the folks that are clicking through on your ads. You can use all of that to help you guide the personas, and to help you really identify the kinds of like long tail questions, and the kinds of personas and the kinds of folks that people are going to or people are going to be asking. So if I go to ChatGPT and in my persona I say I'm a family person, I'm a mom of three, then if I say I need a new car, they're not going to recommend a two-door coupe. They're going to recommend a minivan, or an SUV or something like that. It's really important that we know our customers inside and out, and that we have content that supports the fact that we know our customer inside and out on our website, so that they're able to connect with that. So I think that knowing your customers is super, super valuable. That goes back to the authenticity element that Nate was talking about. It goes back to the way that things are evolving, and I think that it's something that you can't go wrong if you know your customers. That will help you with AI stuff. It will help you with your SEO. It will help you with your PPC. It will help you with everything. But make sure that you know your customers. Don't just use some random demographics. Use your data about your customers.
I think that's really interesting. And actually, while I was listening to you, I was thinking, wouldn't it be interesting if, like, for example, you sold trainers and you were like, started asking ChatGPT, if I was somebody that was about to buy trainers, what are the types of questions that I would be Googling right now? And actually start to work backwards and start uncovering some of the things that you're like, okay, where does the search string actually start? Where am I
Yeah.
going to start the research? Which is, it is really interesting.
So
And a
you
lot of,
absolutely.
sorry, go on.
So that's something you absolutely can do. And if there's something that a lot of these there's AI prompt trackers that will do that for you. Peak AI, exactly. I use Peak AI a lot, and that's something that you can do. And we have an AI prompt tracker within an AI visibility tracker within Wix as well. And I think that it's really important to understand those things. But people have done that for a little while. So I remember somebody who was talking about ads for like Taylor Swift concert, like Eras tour outfits or Renaissance tour outfits or like festival things. But you can literally say like, give me some questions that somebody who's going to Coachella will need, and you can use that to help you make content really really quickly that's really really viral for that particular moment, and it's really niche down to that particular audience, especially if you know that people are going to be asking you for those anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a little bit of what you covered there as well. I don't know, anybody that knows me knows I love a bit of Mel Robbins, and I've listened to a recent Mel Robbins podcast, and she had a woman on it. If anybody has never heard of this woman, go and look her up on LinkedIn. She's called Ali K. Miller. She's one of the most recognized voices in AI in the sort of AI space at the minute. And I think recognized as one of like the top LinkedIn publishers on AI as well. A lot of what Crystal's just shared was very similar, but what she talks about on the podcast is actually how to utilize some of that additional context that you're giving ChatGPT and Gemini to add into your personal life. Like a lot of people are really getting quite agile with it with the workplace, but they're not actually applying that to their personal life. So what you were mentioning there about what do I need to do if I'm buying a new car and I'm a family and I've got 3 children and I hate Peugeot and I've only got a budget of 15 grand, like give me some suggestions. I do think that's quite interesting. So moving, I think, on to that, Pierre, from the search engineering side, with AI overviews kind of intrusively taking over the search, what should marketers rethink at the moment?
So that's an important point. I want to get back to it, but I want to basically take a step back and build on something Crystal just said and Nate said earlier. What AI is doing is actually, there are fundamentally doing two things that people need to be very, very mindful about. The first one is changing the customer behavior, okay? Because it's allowing users, anybody, to be able to complete tasks and learn about things that was not possible only a few years ago, okay? So that's changing. The other thing that is happening, and the chat interface actually allows that a lot, it actually enables it, is that the whole customer funnel, the whole customer decision journey from awareness all the way to purchase is suddenly in that one interface. So marketers historically used to think that this keyword is top of the funnel, this one is bottom of the funnel, this is a simplistic model like that, yeah. But roughly speaking, but suddenly the whole funnel is actually in this one interface. Whether it's AI mode, whether it's ChatGPT, it doesn't matter. And when you compress that channel to one place, you need to start thinking about, well, ads, if your ads and your campaigns run because, bottom of the funnel, because it's close to the conversion, actually close to the conversion is like literally 5 minutes after the guy that, the searcher started saying, I want to buy a new treadmill because they asked that of, AI mode or ChatGPT and said, okay, fine. And, they personalize it a little bit and then, suddenly they get a recommendation and then boom, they're ready to go. So thinking about AI as the whole customer journey in one place is actually one of the things that we need to change our mindset about, because it's not about SEO, it's not about PPC anymore. It's all in one big pot. We're throwing it all in one user interface. And I'm looking at the chat here, talking about CPM ads or CPC ads. Fine, there's lots of things to think about here. I would easily imagine also ChatGPT and others going to like an affiliate model where they actually get earnings from the sales that they drive. So it's all going to be very interesting on that point. Now, to go back to your question, and again to build a little bit about what Crystal was saying, AI mode and AI overviews, the first thing that they do is what's called a fan out. So you go and type in a query right now. In the back, the AI mode does what's called a fan out. So it actually expands into multiple queries. Now, and that fan out is critical to get to what this AI overviews and AI modes show you. And actually, I've done a lot of work on this. And actually, I have my own internal tool that does fan out. And to go back to what Crystal was saying, is that if you don't know your customers, you're going to get the wrong fan out. Okay? So to go back and say, what do they want? What kind of questions would they be asking? That becomes important. And so when you start to saying that, AI overviews and AI mode are taking over the search engines, you need to be thinking not just that there's this physical space that's gone from you. You need to follow up and think about what are the other questions that they would be asking. Okay? Because right now, you start a question, you get the AI overviews in Google or the Copilot search in Bing, and immediately, if you expand that in Google, there's a big button that says follow up, dig deeper in AI mode. It's literally telling you you can dig in deeper. And you as a marketer, if you are not going to be able to answer those follow-up questions, and this goes back to the fan out idea, you might as well be gone because you're just not going to be there. You're not going to be shown the search results. Is it? It's game over already. There is no page 2. Yes, well done, Tal.
A brutal response from Pierre there. If you don't get it right, you might as well be gone. So on that absolutely abrupt response there, and look, we're talking about hills you'll die on here, right? So everybody's entitled to their outrageous opinion. That is Pierre's right now. I am gonna move to Kirk. So Kirk on the PPC side, what I think would be quite interesting, selfishly for me to know, is how AI is kind of leveling the playing field between big budget advertisers and perhaps the smaller teams. Because I think one of the things that is quite frustrating, certainly as a marketer, is you go to a lot of these events and you've got your Coca-Colas, your Nike, Kellogg's, all of these big companies, and like, oh yeah, we're adopting AI and blah 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 blah. And it's like brilliant. Your budget, your access to training, your access to certain types of business resources just totally different. So then when you start talking about AI and its like enabling capability, like what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So this is one of those funny topics because it's so new, and also there's so much changing and so much complexity that it's really difficult to answer questions without lots and lots of caveats and things like that, right? So I'll try not to be so philosophical and try to like actually answer your question. The way I see the AI thing right now, with actually like how is this impacting our clients, our businesses, is it reminds me a little bit of I was talking to someone else about this at a conference actually recently on the SEO side. So I do PPC, but it's kind of like everyone is treating it like it is this like triage, fantastic, massive emergency. And I think that it is, in the sense of it's changing the game. And also I think there's a reality where like we're also still existing in the realm we're existing in right now, right? And so there's an aspect where like AI isn't changing that much for my clients, big or small. And then also like it is. So when you ask like, is it leveling the playing field? In some ways it is. I mean, in some ways, like a smaller client has more access to be able to, make content like creative easier. It is going to eventually be easier to to manage more accounts and that sort of thing with AI. But I think there's some level of I think the big picture thing is right now that I see with this is that AI is utilized by and accessible to like all advertisers and Google advertisers at the same time in some ways. And I haven't really seen adoption of or adoption not of actually impacting client performance that significantly at this point. The only way I would say that it has impacted us, specifically with your question, is just the fact that like Google has been running AI stuff in some of these same ways, like machine learning, like the forerunners to what we have now in LMs. Google's been running that for years, and just because like the fact that Google and all of its trillions of dollars, like that's served by the ad by the ad industry, like that's the ad side of Google, that is their revenue. So like Google really wants to make sure that advertisers have this stuff. So in some ways, like that's also part of it, of the AI big thing, right? Is we're looking at this, we're like, hey, we've just been utilizing a lot of these AI tools for years. And so I think maybe it's less, in some ways, it's less of a shift so far for us on the PPC side than with SEO, because like, there's actual like traffic drop happening, and there's kind of a bigger emergency with that. It's just not quite the same, in my opinion, with PPC. The only thing I'll know is that, and then I'll shut up. The only thing I'll know is that I think what's going to change a lot is just this idea of like, where the heck are ads going to show up and how the heck are ads going to show up in AI overviews as those begin taking over more. Pierre talked about that. I love the idea of that funnel. Like, you have more of a conversation. I was at Google. We were discussing this with some of the engineers of just like what how do you define even like what section of a conversation should be bid on, right? So there's even this timing of like, when are ads going to appear in, let's say, a conversational flow. I mean, there's just a whole lot of things with that. So anyways, yeah, a little bit rambling there, but yeah, I don't know if that didn't give you what you want. Let me know, ask some follow-up questions. So.
Listen, we've all got to have a little bit of a ramble. I feel like as far as AI is concerned, a lot of it is kind of ramble, because it's like you are starting. I think a lot of the time when people ask you questions, you're formulating your opinion like as you speak, and you're kind of like, okay. So I think from your perspective, I would agree with you though. I think from a PPC perspective, I do think that maybe because of our exposure to an AI within the platforms for a period of time, it is less so a new thing. And I think maybe that's what marketers in our area is certainly feeling. I think, obviously there is the bigger conversations around different pieces of AI tech, but I guess leaning back into the conversation, Crystal, in terms of like what day-to-day SEO habits or tools people should start using if they're not already to stay visible in an AI-driven search world. Like, obviously we were having a little bit of a joke about some of the tools at the start of the call before everybody joined, but is there anything that you kind of feel like, as a marketer, these are just non-negotiables at the minute for you to at least be playing with?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, anybody who's interested in AI visibility should absolutely be using AI regularly. I use AI, I use ChatGPT, I use Gemini, I use Perplexity, I use them all really, really regularly. You need to know what you're working with. That's super important. Secondly, I would say that if you're interested in that, you need to be tracking what's going on there. We have an AI visibility tool built into Wix. We mentioned Peak AI, for instance. Essentially, the way that these things work is you will have a set of prompts, and it will run those prompts over a certain regular period, and then you can see whether you're mentioned, which is like your name is mentioned, whether you're cited, where you have a link to your website. And then within our tool, for instance, it tells you whether or not you were positively mentioned or negatively mentioned. It will also identify competitors where competitors have mentioned and things like that. And this will tell you whether or not you need to understand, whether or not you need to make a lot of adjustments. Another one that I recommend is having a look at your audience. Not all audiences are fully bought into or fully like into AI. So if one tool, and on our AI search lab, for instance, we have an article about this. One tool is SparkToro. SparkToro will tell you, has a tool that will let you look up your keyword. For instance, like if I was to look up something like website builders, we're a website builder. If I was to look that up, I can see if people who search for that are more likely or less likely than the average person in the US, for instance, to use ChatGPT. I tested this on programming versus potatoes. Programming people are very likely to use ChatGPT. People who are interested in potatoes, it didn't even show up in the top 7 of their platforms. So this tells me if I was working for, I don't know, the potato board or whatever it is, if I was working for that team, I don't necessarily need to run. I don't need to throw loads of resources at that right now. I do need to prepare because search is changing, but I don't need to run necessarily. So that is useful to qualify yourself there. I'm also really, really interested in I'm SimilarWeb. SimilarWeb has some great data on the way that people are using AI, and you can get some good third-party data on how much traffic other websites or competitors are getting from AI, what you're getting, where you're getting that information as well. So I would say that that's really, really valuable too, and that will tell you whether or not you're doing that. Google Search Console is useful, but doesn't tell you what's coming from AI. It also doesn't tell you what's coming from AI overviews, so it's not as useful as it used to be. And I would also say that if you were, for instance, if you're checking AI overviews, I would say for your key queries, it's worth checking manually, because a lot of the tools that I've seen will say you're not showing in an AI overview, and I'm looking at the link on Google, and they're saying like, no, it's not there. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's been there for a week, and you're not showing it. So if you have something that's a really important query, I would double check that on manually. And I'm not saying do that for 400 queries, but definitely do that for a few. Um, so yeah, those are some of my core ones that I think are really important. The other one that I really love, I mentioned Base 44. Base 44 is really good. Sal talked about being building on demand. Base 44 has on a couple of occasions saved me from situations where I was in new territory and I needed a tool, and there wasn't a tool for the job. LMs.txt is something that we have added to Wix websites. I was looking at analyzing some of those in bulk. There wasn't a tool to do this. I ran them all through Screaming Frog, and you can't analyze Markdown in Screaming Frog. It looks at HTML, JavaScript, CSS. There's no Markdown analysis. So I built a Markdown analyzing tool in Base 44 with help from Gemini. And so the ability to be able to just build your solutions as and when you and your team need them is incredible. Our team at Wix built one for meetings like this, for like all hands meetings where we could do question and answers. We just built one for what we needed. And I think that with that, I think that it's always important to remember that in this new world where the things are changing so fast, like you can change too, and like you can just do stuff. So if you get stuck, you can just do stuff. And if you don't know how to do it, like you can just ask ChatGPT or Gemini to help you. When I built that thing on Base 44, it needed Python. I didn't know how to do Python, so Gemini coached me to do Python, and then we got something that worked well. So yeah, don't I think get stuck in with whatever tool, and if you get stuck with the tool, use the AI to help you.
I think I've popped a couple of those ones that you mentioned in the chat, but obviously if anybody has any other ones that they've used, feel free to pop them in the chat just for the rest of the team to kind of look at. Kirk, can you kind of give us an example of AI making work a little bit easier and for your team specifically? Because I think we sort of alluded to it in your intro, and potentially any other tasks that newcomers should be trying to start to automate now.
Yeah. So yeah, again, on the PVC side, a lot of the AI tools we use increasingly are being built natively in Google, which is super interesting and helpful. The way I look at how we utilize AI for PPC, so I mentioned this before. I look at it more like it's this like executive or research assistant, right? So if we would like as an example, if we would just put in, so if I'm preparing for a call, I'm going to have a prospecting call. We get a bunch of information. I ask quite a few questions beforehand before I'm going to hop on a call. And that gives me that data, right? Then I'll take that. I'll take their website. I just take a bunch of. I might even put some emails in. I just try to get a bunch of information, and then just say, hey, like, what are some things that I should be ready for in this call? What are help me with some main points, right? Um, if I would just like read off that script on that call, like the call would go terrible, right? As we all know. And I think that's a good example. But like there are many times where it surfaced some interesting like almost like, hey, they mentioned something about performance. You might want to specifically dig into this XYZ thing they mentioned, right? So just an example of like it helps me. It just completely helps me by doing a lot of that research for me. Um, and I think that's where on the Google Ads side, I just see that a lot. Like we'll utilize it for product feed optimization. We'll utilize it for competitor research, like landing page analysis and research, right? Um, ad creative. I mean, none of this stuff is probably different than if anyone's on here doing PPC. It's probably like similar to what we're all doing. But I just think there are ways that, again, as you're thinking of it, it's not like you're saying, "Hey, give me 20 ad headline ideas for this one website," and then you're just putting those in, right? We're gonna be prompting this with the information that we know on who their target audience is. Like we're gonna try to get a good idea of like, this is who we're aiming at. Here's some of their competitors. Here's a bunch of reviews. Like find us things that we're missing, and then bring out the benefits in this ad headline, not just facts, right? And then a lot of times it's going to spit out 10 various ideas. We'll take that and we'll get to the final product. So again, I think that's just where at least for how we utilize it. And then, like I said, there's so much of the traditional quotation marks AI already baked in with Google, with like smart bidding, and then there's like all of these AI type campaign types too, performance max, AI max, that sort of thing. They're doing a lot of that stuff too, by the way, with the targeting and all that. So in some ways, it's like what do we have to identify? Someone had mentioned it in the chat, and this really is the case, is like it's helping us be more strategic, because the AI is handling more of the heavy lifting of the technical stuff, if that makes sense, right? So it actually allows us in some ways to have the time to dig way more into who are these people, who are their competitors, like what are some key things to bring out that we maybe aren't testing those in the content, that sort of thing, than I think in the past. So yeah, that's typically, specifically in PPC, I think how we're utilizing that at our agency.
I think it's interesting as well because when you talk about that's what you're asking ChatGPT, you think about some of the best strategy sessions that you have with your team. Those are the types of questions that you ask in those meetings when you're going, okay, like how could we be better? What are
Mm-hmm.
other people doing? Like it's actually like having that conversation with your other strategists on your team, whether you're in PPC or any other part of marketing. And I think that's especially useful for businesses or teams that are smaller that don't maybe have that abundance of resource. So
Mm-hmm.
moving on to
Mm-hmm.
Pierre, Google is pushing information satisfaction, aren't we all? What does satisfying content actually look like?
So it depends on the customer you're going for, right? So this is the problem that people like. Again, we keep talking about this, but I still see many people get it wrong. I mean, let's take a very simple example, right? Imagine that you want to buy a treadmill. I mean, January's coming. I mean, Christmas is coming up. Already thinking about the diet I'm going to start in a few months. So imagine you want to buy a treadmill, and if you go in on Google and you type in best treadmill, right? Beyond this, like, am I a consumer that I want something for my home? Or am I building out a gym? Like, I actually starting an actual gym and I need a treadmill to put in the gym. And these are very, very different consumers, like customers for that would ask the same question. Okay? And so when you think about, information satisfaction, and this goes back to like, we talked about the fan out and the customers and all the data that you have, is that best treadmill for what? And for what use case, in which scenario, which context. So these are the kinds of things that you need to be thinking about. The user's context, the language they're using, why they want it, what are they trying to achieve with that, and then you can start thinking about, well, what is the best content for that? Okay, and so for certain queries, they bias massively towards consumers or B2B or something like that. So, you probably get that fairly easily. But there's many other queries that could be done by many different personas, many consumer types, and you need to differentiate between them very clearly and say, are this or that. A great example of that would be medical websites. Okay, many medical websites, when you go to them, you land on a web page and says this is actually for patients or their carers. But if you're a medical professional, a healthcare professional, here's another link for you. And you look at that link, you click on it, and read the different. You read the same. I mean, if you understand the technical part, but if you read those two pages together next to each other, they're very, very different. They use different language. It's much more technical and deeper on for healthcare professionals. But for patients and carers, it's very, very different. Okay, and this is the kind of thing that you need to be thinking about. Although the same query could be done by both a healthcare professional and a patient, what they want quickly follow up from that is going to be very different. And so that's where information satisfaction comes from.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. And So I'm just going to go to my co-host here, guys, a minute, because there's a couple of questions pouring in. And actually, I don't know if you want to listen to me drone on as much as you want to actually ask the panelists questions, because after all, they are the reason you've joined. So, Sal, do you want me to do like one more question and then we go to audience questions? Because I appreciate
Sure.
people have
Yeah,
sort
there
of.
were actually no questions. I was telling everyone to get ready to ask
Oh,
questions.
okay,
So
okay,
maybe
right,
maybe actually they read it like that too. So if you've got a
okay.
question, just shoot it in and we'll try and get to it.
Okay, so in that case, I'm gonna ask our panelists one more question, and if you've got questions for panelists, please put them in the chat box now, and I will come to those in just a sec. So I think just on the last question, I'm going to try and wrap up so we can move on to this. Um, Here's a good one. Okay, so if the audience here today can do one thing tomorrow that they are not doing today to prepare for the LLM revolution or whatever you want to dress it up as for your respective areas, like what is one thing that people are not doing today that you would advise them to do tomorrow? So I will just nip back to you, Crystal. What would be one thing that you would recommend everybody on this call to go and do tomorrow if they're not already doing?
Okay, one thing. I think that it's worth having a look at your, if you haven't done it already, have a look at how much traffic you're actually getting from ChatGPT, from Gemini, from all of those things. You can see it in Google Search Console, or not in Google Search Console, in Google Analytics. You should be able to see this, and that's really important. The other thing, this is the thing that you should actually do. The other thing that's worth doing is to have a look in your bot log reports. So this might be something that you might have to ask your developer for, or whoever who manages your bots, your bot logs, or whatever. But basically, have a look in your bot log reports. In Wix, we have a panel for this, and essentially, you can see which pieces of content OpenAI's training bots are going to. You can see which pieces of content their user bots are going to. And you can see which ones their search bots are going to, and this will help you to understand which pieces of content are being missed, which pieces of content they're not looking at, which pieces of content they don't need to look at. And you can update your robots.txt based on this. You can also prioritize content. So in my research, what I've seen is that OpenAI in particular will crawl the homepage probably 4 times more than any other page on the website. This is really important because a lot of people's homepages are essentially like they're just window dressing. They don't say anything in particular. If your homepage doesn't say anything, then that might be restricting your AI visibility. So it's really important to understand which pages they're going to and to address to modify your content strategy accordingly. And I think you should see some good results from that.
Some good suggestions there. Pierre, anything to top that? What would be the one thing that you would recommend everybody on this call, if they are not already doing, what would you recommend?
Go to your customer support team and get all the questions that are getting asked by customers and put them through the AI and see what the answers are.
What would you do with that information when you've got it?
Well, let's see what it says, because if people are asking about your brand, if they're asking about specific products, if they're asking about specific problems that your products can help them with, whatever it is, that's the lay of the land right now, that people, instead of calling you, are doing that kind of research with the AI, with the LLMs, and put it through ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Copilot. Do it through all of them and just see what comes back. You will see your competitors show up. You'll see yourself show up, hopefully. You'll see content that you don't expect from your website show up. You see random old pages. I mean, many companies I work with are large and they have many, many websites that are very old. And we find very old pages from, I'm not joking, 2005 show up in the LLMs. Okay, so it's, we're like, why is this still showing up? But that's where the training comes from, and that you need to like take a look at that and clean up and make a plan forward depending on what you find.
I think that's a really good suggestion from a housekeeping and hygiene perspective, especially, but definitely from uncovering things maybe that are a little bit more surprising. So, Kirk, you've got a really tough job of, Crystal and Pierre have already given us some actionable takeaways in terms of one thing that we can go away and do. From a PPC standpoint, what would be the one thing that you would recommend to anyone on this call who is involved in PPC and wanting to sort of step up their game in terms of using AI, being a little bit smarter with AI? What would you recommend they do?
Yeah. So I think like a prompt is only as good as the human asking it. So if you want to actually utilize AI well for PPC, you still need to understand how people purchase, what is motivating someone to purchase. You still need to understand like if you're doing a lot of e-commerce PPC, it's really helpful to just to know some basic like economics of stuff, whether it's your clients or that of just how things work in terms of why things go out of stock. Like I think there's a whole lot of other stuff that you can become an expert at, so then you will be able to utilize the AI either natively in the platforms or in terms of your own prompting to get you to a place so that you're actually able to ask the right things, get the right information. So like, like with Pierre's example, which I love those type of things, right? Reviews are such a great way, and it's actually way easier to mine lots of reviews with AI, right? Um, but then like but to me then what do you do with that, right? To me that's where then someone who understands better like the psychology of purchasing, and that can actually take those things and use that to then determine like what are some of the benefits they're bringing out, like how should this change how the offer is presented on this page, and all of that stuff works into making PPC perform better, because all of that stuff is part of performance. All of that stuff is part of someone actually purchasing. It's not just you buying into the right auction as a PPCer. And so I think someone who really understands this stuff. So maybe one of those is especially if someone's just getting started, I actually think like getting involved with an agency sometimes can be very helpful and just rapidly increasing your force to work with a lot of different kinds of businesses. You're often able to learn from others, and you just sometimes get a little bit of a better insight into your own personal skills, communication, all that stuff, so that then you can actually incorporate and utilize AI better.
So I am now going to go back to one of these questions that we've buried a little bit. So Adele, thank you for bearing with us. One of these questions that we've got. So please talk about GEO specifically, not generally. Thank you. With examples on existing players slash products and how the pricing mechanics differ, if any, from SEO. So Sal, I don't know who you would like to direct this question to. I feel like
I
this might
would
be
direct
trans.
it back to Adele if you're comfortable coming on and maybe just clarifying that a little bit. I didn't understand the pricing mechanics with SEO because there's not really pricing mechanics unless you're talking about backlinks and things like, yeah, what do you mean by pricing mechanics between GEO
Oh, hi.
and SEO?
Honestly, I don't know how it's priced, like, when you do SEO, when you provide it as a service.
Oh, you mean as
There's
an
SEO companies,
agency?
how you're doing it as a GEO, as a supplier of GEO services,
Okay.
and how
So he's
Got
that
it.
providing
kind of
GEO
how that
services.
differs, yeah.
Well, I could probably answer that one, and maybe I'll roll and answer the next one as well because I've got quite a strong opinion on that. But I would just look at it as a similar thing. I'd price it higher because you're covering more things. But yeah, I would do it based on the amount of traffic that you're anticipating receiving from them, and then coming up with a calculation. It's important to realize that the lines are blurred between SEO and GEO. So it's not like you can take over somebody's GEO services and not do the SEO as well. You have to be in on both, unless you're working for a massive brand where they just need hyper specialization. And that kind of bleeds into the next question, which is SEO dead? I think absolutely not. Like, you know, SEO is basically the engine of all of this, and it continually will be, right? Like, what are we really doing? Pierre was at Google in the early days actually building the search functionality. I was helping scale out the ad side of things, but fundamentally, all we're doing is this, but for more channels. I think that's the easiest way to think about it. Don't overcomplicate it. I'm doing it for Microsoft, I'm doing it for TikTok, I'm doing it for ChatGPT, I'm doing it for DeepSeek, I'm doing it for Claude. That is it. And most of them feed from the same things or index the same things. So if you are an SEO expert, you will need to develop GEO skills, but it is not dead by any means. But I think this is an important bit because people also say the opposite, which is GEO, and I'm calling it GEO, it's actually AEO, by the way. Anyway, but it's been a big battle between GEO, AEO, and LLMO. And yeah, I've bought more domain names than I can care to remember. But fundamentally, I actually look at GEO as a parent of SEO, which is wild. But when you think about it, what is SEO? SEO is a search engine optimization. AI is coming for not just the search, but for everything. The agent, anywhere where there is traffic, it will be. So SEO is the most important part of it, but it's only a part. You know, if you're in your Tesla talking or in your Waymo on the way to somewhere, or you're using your Meta Ray-Ban glasses or vibe coding something, you will be pulling searches in. So to say that SEO is like a different thing from it is wrong. It's pulling from this master source. Almost if you think about the Earth, the core is SEO, you know, this big melting thing, and then every the other layer is all the other different platforms. So SEO is by far the main one, but it's all part of a wider subset, which is this GEO world. And I think it will collide with ads in an interesting way, which is interesting because that's why we're doing this. But if you think about what's happening now, and I'm kind of ranting, but if you think about what's happening at the Google model, like an affiliate would create a website, it would have 10 links of the best hiking shoes to buy, and they would link into Amazon, they would link to eBay. Now, what Google is doing is using its AI, going into that site, getting all the information it needs, pulling it back out, putting it into a nice, neat AI answer, and then selling it to somebody else. Like that is SEO and PPC merged in a way that you can't imagine. And how does that evolve? What happens? So I think all of us are going to have to be across all of this, not as practitioners, but at least with sort of loose knowledge behind each of this. So yeah, hopefully that that's a little bit.
Can I
I think
contribute to that as well?
you can, Crystal.
I think I've sometimes hear people and they're like, I was talking to someone at a different event and they were like, oh, but it seems very similar. And I'm like, if you were training for a 5K and you were training for a marathon, you would essentially have the same kinds of things. You need to like set up a training program. You might need to get a coach. You need to like set up a schedule of what you're going to do. You need to stretch. You need to have rest days. You need to do all those sorts of things. But running a marathon and running a 5K are different. They're very, very similar. There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of core things that are similar. But you know, it's a different thing. It's like it's a different it's an evolution. But I think the other thing that I think people need to realize is with this is that like we are very early days. Nate mentioned like the back of the days of like Alta Vista and all that sort of stuff. Somebody recently closed down an LLM monitoring tool, and they were like, "It's the same. It's not. We don't have to do anything other than SEO." And I'm like, "Does anybody remember Excite, the search engine Excite?" Pierre, you're nodding. Right. Excite was a thing when Google had a 33% market share. And nobody said that's the end of search engines then. Just because one thing finishes doesn't mean that like that's the whole end of the whole thing. And I think that we are very early days with the agentic solutions that are coming on. You have the agentic e-commerce, you have the agentic commerce protocol, you have the A2A protocol, you can the MCP, you have all of these different things. I think that the tools that people who want to drive visibility are going to need are going to extend into those. So making your website agentic will be an optimization for an LLM because then you're not just being cited, you are the tool, right? Creating plugins for ChatGPT is an optimization for visibility because you are in the tool. Custom GPTs, perplexity pages, there's tons and tons of things. So I think that as these things evolve, there will become more distinct elements. At the moment, there's a lot of overlap. But I think that if you're looking forward 5 years, 2 years even, you'll be looking at some of these trends that are emerging. Like just somebody was just sharing that ChatGPT's browser atlas uses area tags, which are accessibility tags, and they use area tags to crawl different websites. That's another specific optimization that you can do for LLMs.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to stretch ourselves. We need to get stuck into like learning more about machine learning. We need to get stuck into learning more about like, the dev architecture and machine learning architecture and information architecture. There's things that we as SEOs or people who come from an SEO background need to get stuck into. If you're using the exact same skills, you might you might be a little bit lost. But I think that, just as if you were going to go from running a 5K to running a marathon, you kind of have to step it up a little bit. It's a little bit of that.
Only a little bit though. Only a little bit. There's only a few miles between 5K and a marathon.
Dude, I did a
Yeah.
10K and then I did a half marathon, and like I will never ever do it again. I don't know. I don't understand how people do marathons. Like my
Um,
knee swelled up. It was awful.
on that note though, honestly, I think there's obviously been some great discussion here, and I think we could talk forever about what might be on the horizon. I think the key things here from everybody to get out of this call is take something actionable away from this call, where even if it's you'll really you feel super overwhelmed with AI, like go and use it from a user's perspective. If you are not already using it, you are miles behind, but it's not from a work perspective, it's from a user perspective. Understand the type of information that it's passing back to you. Have a play around with it. Ask it what you should get on your shopping list, on you doing your big shop on a Saturday when you send it a picture of your fridge, or whatever it is that is going to make your life a little bit easier. You start tapping into, I think, one of the important things, I think, from a PPC perspective, and something that certainly I hope Kurt will agree on, is I think that conversation around personalization is not new on a PPC front, certainly not. And I think from my perspective, I have always looked at SEO as like cover the most amount of things, cover the most amount of things. And for us, it's been for a very long time personalization, personalization, personalization. And I think it's interesting to see the two come and meet in a place where there's a lot of things that are just as important for both parties, and we're forcing conversations that perhaps should have happened years and years ago. But on that note, thank you everybody. We started a little bit late and we finished a little bit late. So ever the timekeepers, I promise it's not a Lancaster thing. It's definitely a Sal thing. So I am going to wrap up by thanking all of the speakers, all of the attendees. The session is recorded. I think maybe the guys at Diginius are going to be able to send it out to attendees. Yeah, so we'll send it out to attendees post attendee. You can run it through your AI generator and ask it to give you the key takeaways for your next LinkedIn post. But generally, thank you so much. Please take the takeaways from the speakers and action something. Action something. Otherwise, if you've just spent an hour and 20 minutes with us just for the good crack, go away, be better at your job, take something to heart that you learned today. And I stole that one from Mel Robbins. So thanks, everyone. Peace out.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye. 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 Bye.